Shan Tui gets the job done.
Big time Paddy, looks like he's clocked sub 30 seconds.
Hello everybody, good evening and welcome into Dog Zone, where it's all about the amazing chase. The qualification period is over. We have our 8 greyhounds. The match races have been decided and it will all be set down for Sunday afternoon at Addington Raceway. Joining us here on the show, Mark Rosanowski, back from his week away. Rozo, hopefully you got a little bit of R&R in last week, but certainly a full-packed show for you to get your teeth into this week.
Yeah, certainly, Andy. Look, I did get a couple of days off and it was nice. I must admit, though, that I did watch a fair bit of greyhound racing during that time because it was the final week of qualifying for the Amazing Chase, and of course we had the National Series going on as well. So a busy week, but nice to watch some from on the couch, and then back in the commentary box for Friday, where things changed for the Amazing Chase qualifying at Hattrick, as it looked like it would. Manukau on Sunday, of course, too, with Penny Mac solo trialling. And yeah, of course, we had the trials at Addington that kind of tipped the chase on its head a wee bit, with the exception, Andy, of the fact that all along we've been thinking Dinah Dave is the one to beat, and the market clearly shows that.
It certainly does. We'll have a look at that market now for you. Dinah Dave comes up against She's For Us. He's $1.50. Penny Mac 7, Robson 8. Rozzo, he deserves to be favourite, $1.50. It looks fairly easy shopping around him winning, barring bad luck, slowing his time down. Is there any value there outside of him that you can see?
No, it's hard to bet against him, Andy, given the way he's going into this final, because last year he was the favourite, but he was an easing favourite at Wanganui. He was away from home and things just didn't go right for him in the sort of couple of weeks build up to the final. But everything's been so good about it this week, Andy, this year I should say, that the times that he's been running, particularly last week, but you know the week prior as well, mean, you know, you'd think he's going to have an off night, and things have probably set up reasonably well for him in the first match race of the night. Certainly I think Penny Mac and Robson are dogs that have had match race experience and that are good enough to make things interesting, but you still think that Dinah Dave's going to have an off night, even if they have really good nights.
You would think so. He's just flying at the moment. Of course, a 29.67 to his name, and that's pretty hard to beat. He comes up against She's For Us. It will be match number 1 come Sunday. $5.25 for She's For Us. Dinah Dave at $1.12, Rozzo. It's really, really hard to paint a picture that sees Dave beaten.
Exactly. You would think that $1.12 might be appealing to people who just want to add that extra percentage into their multis there on option 521. She's For Us is relatively new to New Zealand. Look, it's Matt Roberts trading She's For Us up against Father Craig Roberts, and of course they've had some epic battles in Group 1 contests. She's For Us, Andy's got a couple of wins to her credit at Sandown Park. Now, she's had a couple of misdemeanours, and so she's come over here and finishing on to the lure to help her out. I thought her fresh up run was really good, and this is what she actually qualified with. Remarkably, 30.49 in a second placing here. This is her in the black and white and launching to the lead. And her splits so far sort of been around that 5.08, 5.10, but of course the track hasn't been running fast at Hattrick. The times haven't been quick. She gets run down here by DJ Dynamics, who's a strong dog, and overall I thought this was a good stepping stone for her. Her 2 runs since have been thwarted by wide draws. She's looking for the rail. Matt Roberts said it was essential she drew the rail, and she has. Now, of course, she's up against Dinah Dave, and Matt doesn't expect to beat Dinah Dave. But Peter Ferguson said something interesting to me. He said, I'd be happy to have drawn Dinah Dave, because if you were to beat him, you'd probably win the Amazing Chase. If you were to chase him home, you get a really good opportunity at running second in the Amazing Chase. So I don't think this is a bad match for She's For Us in terms of her overall finish, but in terms of head-to-head, she looks a sitting duck.
She certainly does. It's hard to see how Dave doesn't get somewhere nearer into the first turn, especially the way he's beginning, and we'll show you that in a moment. Dinah Dave, he's just flying. He's 29 and 67 at his latest start, which is within a length or so of the track record. And Rosso, as I said, the thing with him, he's just beginning so much better now. He was able to get under Sailor Allen into the turn his last two starts, and Sailor Allen's an absolute rocket off the boxes, so his early manners have certainly improved. This is him off the 7, and if he begins like this, he's probably going to be in front by the time they head into the back straight, and from there it's tea and toast for She's For Us.
Well, it is. She's For Us is not strong over the concluding stages. Now, I guess my only concern, Andy, would be that things go wrong at the first bend, and She's For Us, who's inexperienced on the track, hasn't raced there. But important to note that when she first came to New Zealand, she trialled twice on the track, once over the sprint and once in a post-to-post. And she ran a good time too in the sprint, low 17s. She does like the rail, just hopefully she won't get it wrong at the first bend with Dave parked outside her. We've seen lately there, Andy, as you say, he's jumping well, and then with Sailor Allen leading, he's been going to the inside of him like he knows the form of his kennel mate. He doesn't know She's For Us as well, of course. Do hope they don't come together at the first bend. That would be the only way I think that would prevent Dave. Well, I still think he'd win the match race, to be perfectly frank, no problem, but it might prevent him from winning overall. Andy, that was his 10th sub-30-second winning time at Addington. It's a phenomenal record. It's his fastest time, which means he's racing as well as he ever has, which is a remarkable thing to say about a dog who's been so good for so long, albeit without winning a group race.
Yeah, the incredible thing is he hasn't won a group race. I was talking to Craig on Saturday. He did suggest to me that he thought this bloke was probably better than Dinah Vickers, and we know what he was capable of achieving. Dinah Vickers, he was an absolute machine, one of the best we've seen, and Craig's sort of alluding to the fact that this fella's able to run faster times, and the only difference being he hasn't been able to win a group race. So that's big praise for Dinah Dave coming from Robbo. The second of the match races will be Penny Mac versus Isavana. Penny Mac 137, Isavana $2.80. Rosso, Penny Mac, a Class 5 greyhound. We know how fast and good he is. Isavana, a Class 1 who we haven't seen since February. So it looks Penny Mac's to lose.
Well, yeah, I think this could be an interesting match race, Andy. We'll talk more about Isavana obviously in a moment. Penny Mac, well, you know, I'm a bit of a fan of the dog. He famously first up in New Zealand last year. He qualified for the Amazing Chase. Then he did the splits at the start last year and was classed as falling. But of course, he ran second in the Golden Chase at the end of March to Robson in the match racing series there. He's won the Group 1 Waterloo Cup. He's been third in an Auckland Cup. He's been on a couple of really good winning streaks, 9 races, 5 races. This is his solo trial last week, Andy, and I know that he had to work pretty hard on this track to run 30.38, so it did take a wee bit out of him, but Steve also felt that he'd had some super post-to-post trials leading into this, but going the full journey in the track was, you know, not the quickest, but he still ran a pretty reasonable time and certainly easily good enough to qualify. That it was a good hard hit out for him and that he could probably be relatively easy on him. Steve's going to fly the dog down and himself, of course, which will be good. And the dog's been there before for the New Zealand Cup Series where he made the final. He won a semi-final in under 30 seconds. You'd think on balance box 1 would suit. Andy, Steve, with a slight concern about it, he said just the way that the setup is at Addington, that Penny will sort of look for the rail and therefore actually maybe run a little bit further than he should. And of course, he's up against the most inexperienced dog, Andy. Penny Mac, I think, has a very good chance of being on the podium overall in the Amazing Chase. But I don't necessarily think it's a given that he wins this match race.
He's up against Isavana, as you say, relatively inexperienced. We haven't seen her race day since February. She's the winner of just the one race from 4 race day attempts, 30 and 67 she clocked on that occasion. Rosso, she was able to trial in 30.02, and we'll have a look at that in a moment. She, from her race day performances as a greyhound that isn't usually fast away, she doesn't exactly rail, so she's going to give Penny Mac every opportunity. As you see there, she's already 2 or 3 off the rail early on, so Penny Mac gets his chance to stay under her early, and obviously if he's in front, she has to be able to come around him to beat him.
Yes, look, initially I thought, crikey, we've got a 4 starting dog in here, a Class 1, who won a maiden and then's been struggling to win a Class 1. But having talked to Dave Fahey, You could argue that the match racing series is made for dogs like her, and it adds the intrigue that we kind of look for sometimes in these races as well. And look, clearly she can run time. She has trialled under 30 seconds, and that was a 30.02. She's extremely well bred, and that's why Dave and Jean bought her. She's a half-sister to Ando's Mac, who won the Melbourne Cup in 2017, and a full sister to Pindari Express, who's broken a couple of track records in country New South Wales early in its career. So she's got that. They tried to get her in pup, and she didn't take, so she's come back to the track. The only down on her is that she trialled post to post on Monday, and Dave wasn't all that happy with her. But outside of that, Andy, I think she gets an opportunity here chasing Penny Mac, who's coming in on a fairly limited race preparation, but he has been extensively trialled. And look, Steve is very happy with the dog. Certainly I'm going Penny Mac, but I think Isavannah might get a bit closer than some people might think.
Yeah, she's certainly a fast greyhound, there's no doubting that, but Penny Mac certainly with the advantage of race experience, and yeah, it's going to be interesting. Match number 3 on the night will be Robson versus Ginger Mite. Robson $1.20, Ginger Mite $4. Another short price favourite here, Rozzo in the form of Robson, and this one is hard to paint a picture to see how he gets beaten.
He's another dog that I really like, and he's another from West Australia, the same as Penny Mac. But he won the Golden Chase at the end of March, the inaugural match racing series there at the Manawatu Raceway. He doesn't have a lot of experience on a two-turn track in New Zealand, but when he's been asked to trial, well, Manukau, he did the business there with a 30.36 to be the top qualifier Sunday before last, and we're looking at vision of that right now. And Andy, Peter Ferguson's taken him down early, as you know, and trialled yesterday, and you texted me through those trial times. Thank you for that. And 30.01 was his time, and I rang Peter, and look, I find Peter a chipper fella always. Known him for years, of course, through harness racing. But, you know, I mean, he was absolutely delighted with the dog. He said, you know, 30.01 for a dog who, you know, clearly gets better each time he goes to a track. He said, ideally, you'd have another trial before Sunday, which, you know, he's not going to, but a third run at the track might be good come game day. But, you know, that's obviously going to be good enough. 30.01, the trial there at Manukau, Andy, so two-turn tracks. Obviously, he raced on them in West Australia as well. So he's only having his 20th start, like Penny Mac. You know, these dogs aren't being over-raced, and I think they'll be well presented to put their best paw forward. And gee, if he's going to improve from 30.01 in a trial, Andy, then Robson's a serious player. I actually find it hard to see him not on the podium come Sunday unless something goes wrong early.
100% agree with you there, and it's hard to paint a picture where something does go wrong for him. I think the $1.20 that he's offering for multi-takers is very tasty, and that should add another 20% into those multis. The dog he's taking on is Ginger Mite. Jared Udy and Denise Cotton will travel him down from their Auckland base. And Rozzo, he's a greyhound who's been in super form of late. He won on Sunday at Auckland in a 30.61. He was obviously broken in at Addington. He raced down the grades at Addington. Since then, all his form has been up north, but he just picks a really, really tough competitor to take on here.
He certainly does. It's third fastest at Manukau up against the fastest. He's a real tradesman, this dog, I think. That's kind of what I say, and I'm not putting him down by that. I just think he does the best with the ability he's got, which is plenty. He's won not far off 50 grand. He's won 14 races. He's run lots of placings. And he has qualified here in a 30.61, winning this AGRC Board Cup. And again, it's been just a really good, solid performance. Jared said to me, this dog, no, he had run faster, obviously, than 30.61. He's a sort of a 30-40 dog, but at the point where he surges, he often finds trouble at Manukau. But as I say, since AJ Christensen bought him out of Addington, he's done a really good job in the north. I think he's in the right location to do the best that he possibly can. Jared said, look, they won the coin toss against M Grand Park, who they thought was probably going to be a better chance for the Turnbull Kennels if it went down, but they won that coin toss. They're going down. They give it a crack. And the other great thing about it for Jared and Denise, they get an opportunity to take Buddy Boom down, and he'll get a look at the track with a view, obviously, to the Galaxy later in the year. This trip might end up being more about the Galaxy in November than the Amazing Chase at the end of July. But they are there. Ginger Mite has earned his right. And once again, Andy, I commend Jared Udy and Denise Cotton for nominating their best dogs to take on the best dogs and to travel, and they've done it numerous times now in the last couple of years.
They certainly have, and it's good to see as well. They're certainly not scared, as you say, to travel and take on the best. And it'd be interesting to see what Buddy Boom can do down here. You would think the 295 at Addington will suit him down to the ground. He's an absolute speedster, as Buddy Boom, and one of the most exciting sprinters to come out of New Zealand in some time. The fourth and final match race, probably the most intriguing. $1.85 a piece for a lot of talk in Nature's Gent. Rozzo, I think it's the only match race we disagree on, but if you like either of them, $1.85 is probably not bad shopping.
You're exactly right, Andy, and I was flipping the coin on this. I was thinking about going the other way because, like the other Fahey runner, Isavannah, I think this match race series is made for a dog like A Lot of Talk. Nature's Gent, obviously the experience, the dog that's defying age that we have spoken about a lot over the last few months. But in terms of A Lot of Talk, he came over here with a bit of a reputation. He'd won 3 times over the 720 metres at Wentworth Park, famous Staying Brothers, Tornado Tears and Rip and Sam. And Andy, he was trialling in phenomenal times around the 29 and 80, but of course he wasn't putting it together on the track. Well, he finally did a start 5 in New Zealand, winning over the 645 metres. But you kind of got the feeling that solo trial would be where it was at. And here he is trialling in 30.05 for him. And he has actually trialled, as we say, faster several times. And even on Monday, Andy, he trialled in a sub 30 at 29 and 99. So we know that he's got that in him. And that's probably the critical point. He doesn't look comfortable in a field. Well, it's a match race, so you say that's terrific. But the way I see this potentially unfolding is that Nature's Gent could potentially worry him out of things at the first bend. And I think that's Nature's Gent's job, because Nature's Gent is a dog who benefits from his race nous, and that's how he's been able to win $250,000, 3 Group 1s, second in the Amazing Chase last year. He doesn't have quite the straight speed as A Lot of Talk. I think if both dogs ran in lanes, you're on A Lot of Talk as the faster dog. But with Nature's Gent, if he can somehow crowd A Lot of Talk to that first bend, and Nature's Gent is a natural railer, then, yeah, I think it could be all on there. So it's about the first bend, Andy, and obviously I can see it your way, and I'm looking to see it my way.
It's one of those interesting races where I think A Lot of Talk can lead up here. Even his 500-metre race, I know he was beaten a long way, but his first few strides off the boxes, he was actually in front before he got crowded. I think with clear air early, we'll see the best of him. And like you say, I think the thing around Nature's Gent, and he's the dog he has to beat, obviously, but I think if A Lot of Talk ends up in front of him off the boxes, which I think he will, I think Nature's Gent, as you say, he's going to flop the rail. His natural thought process is to go the rail and try and get under greyhounds as opposed to come around them. So, Rozzo, that's sort of where I'm at. I think A Lot of Talk can lead him, and that will therefore mean Nature's Gent will try and flop the rail and come under him. And if that's what happens, then, gee, it's really hard for me to see Nature's Gent running past him.
Yeah, I have to agree with that, Andy. The key thing, as I say, is that I am looking for Nature's Gent to have part of his body on the outside of A Lot of Talk to the first bend, and that may not be possible if A Lot of Talk does everything right early. Yeah, as you say, flip of the coin, $1.85, and I think whichever side of the fence you're on, you'll be thinking that's value. Whether you think it's value when they cross the line's the other thing, I suppose.
Yeah, we'll take you back to have a look at Nature's Gent. Obviously, he's the old warhorse of the field. He's been there, done that. He's a multiple Group 1 winner. He loves racing at Addington Raceway. He's won 3 from 7 here, including a New Zealand Cup, obviously. 30 and 11 is his best. We're going to take you back to have a look at him running second on the 19th of July, the dog in the green rake here of box number 6. Rozzo, if he makes this kind of beginning, what happens at the turn? Is that a good enough beginning, do you think, for him to be outside of A Lot of Talk?
No, he may have to be a little bit better than this, Andy. Look, they have had a niggle or two with this dog, as you would with a 4.5-year-old, and as you would with most dogs, obviously. It's a real talent to get the dogs up and humming and 100% on the day, because when they're running at this speed, things can go wrong. I think he's been managed fairly carefully into this, Andy. It wouldn't surprise me if we see a very good beginning from him. He's going to have to. That is going to be critical. And if he doesn't, I'm with you. As strong as Nature's Gent is, it's hard to see him coming from behind A Lot of Talk unless A Lot of Talk somehow freaks out.
Yeah, it is. He's a strong greyhound. A lot of talk, as we know. Of course, he's raced over 700 metres, so if he's in front, then he is pretty tough to beat. In terms of the overall winner, obviously, Dinah Dave is the greyhound they all have to beat. He's the one I'm with on top, Rozzo, and I'm pretty sure you're with him on top as well.
Andy, look, it'd be nice to be brave and tip against the favourite or whatever. I'd love to see Dinah Dave win this. He's one of 3 runners backing up from last year, and I think they've done tremendously well all to make the final. But Dinah Dave is in such good form with that stunning time last week, a very good time the week before. The only time he's been beaten recently has been by Nature's Gent in the South Island Championship. But as we know, that is race situation, and that's where Gent has the nous and sometimes Dave doesn't. So in a match racing situation, Dinah Dave clearly. And then I thought Robson, Penny Mac, the logicals, Andy, and then I put Nature's Gent in for 4th, and maybe you've put a lot of talk in for 4th. We know, of course, that a dog running second could end up running second overall, but I don't see that happening in this situation.
No, I'm with you there. I think the winners will run fast enough to be the podium fillers. I actually think a lot of talk can make his way onto the podium as long as he can beat Nature's Gent to the first turn. As we said, it just depends what happens there. But as we know, he's a very fast greyhound, and I think he can put a sub-30 on the map, on the clock there on Sunday if he does get clear air. So interesting times ahead. Sunday, July the 28th is where it all goes down. Addington Raceway, still tickets available. Get a hold of Tony Music, who is the club secretary, if you want to get along. Right, last week we had a little bit of a chat about the visa fee. We have since received a statement from Greyhound Racing New Zealand that we're about to pop up on the screen for you to have a little bit of a read about. Rozzo, here's what Greyhound Racing New Zealand has to say, and you went on the show last week, so obviously you'll have a few points to point out about the statement.
Yes, obviously there's quite a few words to take in here, but you did allude to the situation last week in terms of what Greyhound Racing New Zealand, some of the issues that they have thrown up, the imported greyhounds from Australia with a history of marring, the issue of stakes repatriation, that's money obviously being won by Australian owners, the prospect of animals remaining in New Zealand after their racing lives to rehome. And then they go on to talk about constituent clubs formally requesting that review and for the board to put in place such a position at the last AGM. I'm doing some work on that at the moment. There are others doing more work, Andy. Because look, this is my own personal opinion and no one else's, but I am not aware that clubs did formally request that. So that is my challenge to that. I need to do some more work on that. Some people are doing some work on that. But I have certainly spoken to some people about what they thought the situation was last year at the AGM when there was any discussion in and around this particular point. Greyhound Racing New Zealand will monitor the effect of this policy and provide for a review of these effects no later than 6 months after its introduction. And then we welcome your feedback on this policy, and we acknowledge that it may take some time to fully realise the best possible solution. Andy, my opinion is that the time for taking feedback is now, before the introduction of any such policy. And then... No, you go, Andy, because I think you're about to say you're 100% for me or for what I'm about to say, and I'll get back to you in a moment so you can reiterate that, because I don't want to take words out of your mouth. But this is a critical key policy that affects a majority of public trainers, if not all in some way. It's not to say that they're all for the fee, but as I understand it, the majority obviously are against the importation fee, and some will be for it. But the time for feedback and consultation is now, before a policy is implemented. I would have thought that would be standard practice.
Yeah, I 100% agree with you on that, Rozzo. It seems that it needs to be talked about. Again, this is in my opinion as well. But just talking to people at Addington last week about it, there does seem to be some confusion around whether or not this was voted on at an AGM or just spoken about. And it seems fairly split whether people think it was voted on or it was just spoken about. So confusion around something as important as this isn't something you want. And Rozzo, we just need to be clear cut with what we're doing. And the fact around rehoming just has me bamboozled when you look through the figures.
Yes, and the figures are a key thing. If Greyhound Racing New Zealand are going to implement a policy such as that, then information must be supplied supporting what is said in that statement. Now, information has been requested by Paul Freeman. He is going to address the board in August To date, I haven't seen any of that information come back. They are straightforward questions around statistics that should be available to be supplied to back what that statement says. If they are not supplied, then if I was a public trainer, I would have some very serious issues about a policy being implemented potentially on anecdotal evidence.
Yeah, from what I can see, the current gap list at about 17% Australian, and what's been rehomed through South Island bases in the last 11 months is at around 16%, so certainly doesn't seem to be any significant issue there. But we do thank Greyhound Racing New Zealand for their contribution and for getting us through that statement, and we do welcome them at any time in the future on any further show to get back in touch with us again. A trainer that is affected by this in the Central Districts is Matt Roberts. Rozzo caught up with him last week at the track and threw at him and asked what his reaction was to the new visa fee.
I can't see any logic behind it, to be honest. I think it's definitely going to be a step in the wrong direction. I know they've sort of highlighted a few reasons why they think it's a good idea, but I, for one, sort of can see a lot of holes in their reasoning, and yeah, I'd like to see some statistics to sort of back up those reasons.
As a young trainer trying to make your way in the sport, how will it affect you?
Well, it's already affected me dramatically. One of my main owners, Stu Dickinson, he's sort of not really interested moving forward with importing dogs over here now. So, and that, taking those dogs out of my kennel will affect me dramatically.
Some of the concerns that have been put forward for this particular fee, obviously stimulation of the New Zealand breeding. What's your reaction to that, imports versus New Zealand breeds?
I'm not anti-New Zealand breeding. I think if they want to try and increase breeding across the country, they should look at some better incentives rather than trying to cut back on imports, because imports are only a small amount of the dogs that race around the country now, and I think they're sort of trying to create issues that don't exist regarding that. In terms of breeding, I'd like to see some more incentives with trying to get New Zealand bred dogs running a bit further. Like they've got the bonuses when you win over 500 metres. Why can't they look at doing something when you win over 600 or further, something along those lines? So, I think in order to encourage New Zealand breeding, they'd be better off looking at some incentives rather than punishing the imports.
Obviously there's concern too around imports that are sent over here because they're failing to pursue over there, and they might go better here finishing on the lure, but the chances of them reoffending, how do you counter that?
Well, I'd like to see some statistics on, the dogs that have been imported over the last 12 months and show us how many have reoffended. And I'd also like to see all the dogs that have been imported over the last 12 months, how many make group level or C5 level. And you've got to weigh up those things. And I went through the stewards reports of the last sort of 90 odd days, and I come up with about 31 dogs that had failing to pursue or marring tickets, and the vast majority of them were actually New Zealand bred. So yeah, I'd just like to see some statistics that sort of back up that theory.
Where is this leaving you as a young trainer with a young family and looking to sort of establish your future?
Well, to be honest, we've had a lot of discussions about possibly getting out of the industry. So, and it's not very nice to be thinking that sort of way. But at the moment, I've actually bred a few litters. I've gone in that direction for now, but it's a very expensive process. And if I'm unable to produce a couple of decent ones, then that might be the end of me in the industry. So, yeah, that's definitely going to make it a lot harder, especially on young people, I think.
So that was Matt Roberts with his thoughts around the new visa import fee, and we do thank him for his time. Rozzo, obviously we're running out of time on the show, but we do thank Matt for catching up, and good to get a young person's view on things as a successful trainer.
Certainly, Andy, and of course, look, got to say it, the Amazing Chase on Sunday is completely, not completely actually, but largely dominated by dogs who in the future may well not be brought into this country because of the fee, and we've got a situation where the dogs that may represent New Zealand and the Nationals, the ones that are favoured to anyway, are dogs that probably sit in the same basket.
Yeah, certainly makes for interesting times ahead. Well, that's about all we've got time for here on Dog Zone today. Rozzo and I will be with you on Sunday for the Amazing Chase. Rozzo, you'll be in a studio, I'll be on course, but Sunday's going to be a boomer.
Andy, look, you do the hard yards on track. I'll put my feet up in the studio. I'd actually love to be there, to be perfectly frank. I've been on course for the first 2 amazing chases. I have loved them. It's been a good initiative from Greyhound Racing New Zealand. And yeah, wish you well on Sunday and wish everyone well. Just hope the whole event goes off nicely, as by and large it has the first two occasions it's run.
Thank you for all of your input, Rozzo. No time for the Dog Zone dogs to follow here. You can catch that on tab.co.nz under the Punters Lounge. We'll catch you on Sunday and we'll be back with Dog Zone next Wednesday. But until then, happy punting.